Hillary Clinton speaking on the attacks in a news conference this morning. She called on Americans to, quote, be vigilant, not afraid. And she also asked for the tech community's help in the fight against terror. Take a listen.
We need to work more closely with Silicon Valley and other partners to counter terrorist propaganda and recruitment efforts online. We're going to stay focused on what will work and how we deploy a strategy that will protect America, work with our allies and partners to take ISIS down, and have a strong counter-terrorism effort online in order to try to defeat the ideology that stands behind these terrorist attacks.
Joining us with more this morning, Shelly Palmer with Palmer Advanced Media, Stephen Levy, editor-in-chief of Back Channel. Guys, it's good to see both of you together. This is interesting. Reaching out to Silicon Valley, Stephen, that relationship between tech and the government has been troubled of late.
It's been incredibly troubled ever since the Snowden revelations, where it turns out that the government was sucking up all the information that Google and Yahoo and others from their data centers that they thought about was private about their customers. There's not been a lot of trust there. And then more recently, the clash with Apple, who wanted to encrypt its data there. And that's something that I'm sure is going to come up as people talk about the bombings in the future there. Specifically, what she's talking about is the recruiting online. And it sort of makes sense to say, gee, we don't want Twitter or Facebook or other places to be platforms to recruit terrorists. But on the other hand, it's very hard to surgically remove those bits which are terrorist recruitment videos from other forms of free speech.
Well, so much of tech, Shelly, is moving toward end-to-end encryption. The companies have said that users' privacy is paramount. So what more can Washington and Silicon Valley do together where privacy isn't compromised?
There's a tremendous amount. First of all, we're dealing with a decentralized enemy, and what they're doing is they're using common tools now to propagate ideas, and ideas are very hard to kill. I'm not even sure you want to force them underground or off Twitter and Facebook because they're very visible. What you do want is to use machine learning algorithms and training sets for machine learning tools to understand what's being said and how it leads to various outcomes, and that is inside our capability, both from the law enforcement side as well as just from the private sector side. Being able to analyze sentiment is something that advertisers have been trying to do for a very long time. They're advertising hate and they're advertising that they're going to do harm. The same tools that we use to advertise, and I hate to use this word, targets in advertising, we can use to identify targets in terrorism. But there's two fights.
This isn't already happening if the capability is there.
So it is happening. This is an arms race in a very real way. On any given day, the tool sets are better than other tool sets. You know, today we're better than them, then tomorrow they're better than us. They have volume on their side, and we have machine learning on our side. So at a certain point, we're going to surpass their volume because the capabilities of the computational power will actually exceed their ability to use volume to beat it. But it's, you know, it's hard. There's no question about it.
I'm thinking, Stephen, you know, we used to go to the post office to see an FBI wanted poster. Today, everyone got it at the same time.
Yes, that thing, I thought it was a tornado going to hit.
Right. In the halls of the UN, phones were going off with this picture this morning.
Yeah, no, that was impressive, and I think it is a statement about that. You don't want to overuse that, to have the thing go off all the time and say, you know, I don't care, when it turns out there is a tornado barreling down the road towards you. But the machine learning thing is really interesting. We've made huge advances of this, but I think machine learning is a lot better when we're identifying images in Google Photos and faces even, and to try to get sentiment there. All you need to do is look at the Facebook trending topics and see how sometimes they pick things that are fake news stories to see that we're not where we want to be on that stuff.
I don't disagree with that statement, but I will say there are two fights here. One is the technological fight, where we're going to have to use tools. And by the way, good or bad, they're the best we have right now. And sentiment analysis and being able to analyze natural language processing, et cetera, it's going to just get better and better and better. But the second, much more important fight is the one against the ideology, a decentralized enemy that can recruit without physically talking to whoever it is they're recruiting.
Right.
And this narrative has to be countered, and it's not as simple as like trying to kill the idea, because history has shown us it is really hard to kill an idea. So a counter narrative must be mounted, and every human being in the world who has a cell phone, who has an online connection, has the ability to be part of this narrative. They're fighting every day to get the hate out there. We're not fighting every day to make it go away. Not everybody, only a certain few. So all of them are working towards making it bad. Not all of us are trying to make it good. It's a big issue.
I think people understand what you mean. Let's switch gears here a bit. John Fortt, as we said, is live at Open World in San Francisco, where he just caught up with Mark Hurd a few moments ago. John, some highlights?
Yeah, Carl, actually, these topics are connected here at Oracle Open World. Of course, Oracle is the biggest database company in the world, and if you want to search through a bunch of information, if you want to store and organize a bunch of information digitally, you need a database. So I did talk to Mark Hurd a bit about national security issues. It gets complicated globally, but right now, from a business perspective, a lot of what Oracle's focused on is the cloud. Here's what Mark Hurd said about that focus this year.
Several years ago, we made the decision as part of this overall strategy to go all in on the cloud. We changed our organization to do that. We changed our incentives to do that, in addition to releasing a lot of great products. In Q1, our cloud growth in dollars, combined with our new software license dollars, grew 16%. So really, to us, it's the combination of those two that are important. And the fact that cloud growth was so high, I mean, we grew our cloud in Q1 82%.
It is a difficult balancing act, of course, when you've got a legacy business that's very large. As that comes down in the cloud era and the cloud business goes up. But Oracle trying to make the argument kind of Apple-like, that they've got this vertical integration. They do hardware and hardware as a service. They do platform and database, and they do applications. Of course, they just announced that they want to buy NetSuite and have clearance antitrust-wise in every country except the U.S. to do that. They are arguing that they can put all that together for customers in a way that makes the cloud faster and more usable than from the likes of Amazon, Microsoft. But of course, everybody's got their own argument, and Amazon continues to be in the lead. We'll continue to see here at Open World how Oracle's develops, guys.
John, good stuff this morning. Steve and I would love to know how you're handicapping this rivalry, which is developing faster than anybody thought.
First, let's take a minute to appreciate Larry Ellison. The guy is older than Donald Trump, older than Hillary Clinton. He's still in there. And I think Salesforce and Amazon and these competitors are keeping him really super energized to be out there. That said, Oracle is late on this. You know, Oracle, the two big breakaways from Oracle were Salesforce and NetSuite. So now Oracle is trying to buy NetSuite, and, you know, coming up against Salesforce, they see as, you know, their big competition in terms of concept there, right? So it's tough for them to catch up. Amazon is way ahead in terms of that. Their culture is built on the cloud, whereas Oracle's isn't quite yet.
Well, Larry Ellison in his keynote took direct aim at Amazon, as we just heard, but it was Salesforce, Shelly, that unveiled its Einstein Deep Learning just hours before the event kicked off. How should we be reading between those lines?
Truthfully, this entire industry is fighting not each other, but the future. Because where we are right now is where power was when everybody had a different kind of power company and there wasn't a municipal grid. At a certain point, these companies are going to have to offer something more than just storage and computing power, whether it's plug and play, machine learning, plug and play, tool sets. You're going to have to be able to run your whole business, and a normal person's going to have to be able to do it, because the high end who already is there is already there. And the CTOs who are going to make the decisions to use some kind of cloud tools already have a faith-based reason to use SAP, IBM, Oracle, Amazon, because all technology is faith-based. So we're going to have to see how they all kind of look at the future. You can't handicap any one of them. If I had a bet, I'd bet Amazon, because they're the biggest, baddest at the moment. But it's not hard to catch up in a certain way, because the technology is increasing at a rate nobody's ever seen in history.
John, your thoughts?
Yeah. Guys, here's what I think is interesting, especially when I look at this from an investor's perspective, from a technology enthusiast perspective. I look at the transition to the web back in the late 90s, the transition to open source in the early 2000s, and then the transition to mobile in the later 2000s. And in those cases, a lot of the legacy tech companies were really slow out of the blocks. This time with the cloud, it doesn't look to me that they're necessarily as slow out of the blocks. The question is whether the likes of particularly Microsoft and Oracle are fast enough to create viable, profitable, quickly growing businesses to actually be some of the last people standing in these cloud wars that we have yet to see. But my sense is they aren't as far behind.
No, it's the profitable part. This is going to quickly get commoditized. The more, this is supply and demand.
Yeah.
And storage is getting cheap, and bandwidth is getting cheaper. And at a certain point, if you're not value adding to that, it's the same problem that the content companies are having with the distribution companies now. Verizon just made a big content bet. Why? You tell me.
You don't think they're Pyrrhic victories really quickly, Stephen?
Well, the comical moment to me in Larry's keynote was when he said, "Oh, and we're going to be cheaper than Amazon." Oracle is not going to beat Amazon on pricing. Give me a break.
My point.
Safra Katz joining us, of course,
Well,
1 p.m. today. John, we're going to move on, talk some Samsung really quick. Selling stakes in other tech companies now as it looks to raise cash amid this global recall for the Galaxy Note 7. Of course, they recalled 2.5 million phones, something estimated to cost over $1 billion. Meanwhile, JP Morgan calling initial positive reaction to the 7 over at Apple premature. The firm says sales are more likely to be in line with cautious forecasts. They currently have an overweight on the stock. Let's handle Samsung first, guys. I saw a note today that analysts covering air freight are now saying it could boost air freight, all those replacement phones. I called it silver lining alert. That's crazy. That's a lot of freight.
This is a brand new Note 7. It actually is a replacement unit. I was very clear to say to everybody, the phones don't explode, defective batteries explode. So that's important to understand, that defective lithium-ion batteries are dangerous no matter what. You can make a lithium-ion battery dangerous by overheating it, by injuring it or crushing it. So Samsung's going to do the best they can. And yeah, I think they are going to have to raise a little money to cover the cost. This is going to be an expensive mistake.
But Stephen, longer term, I mean, there's reports that they've identified the supplier where this problem actually took place. But does Samsung need to go back and rethink its supply chain for future devices and future products?
Well, definitely. They were in a rush to do this. They have Apple on their mind always, and they blew up. They screwed the pooch on this one, for lack of a better term. And and the timing was so good for Apple. You almost wonder how could Apple have not been involved in this? It was so amazing, right? But the long-term thing is interesting because Apple sort of promised for the 20th anniversary, which isn't too far away, which is January. That's going to be the new design of a new phone and things like that. So we've had a big push of people who have old iPhones now coming up and lining up in the stores to buy it now. What's going to happen during the holiday season with that specter of a new iPhone in January looming?
I mean, that's the short term, but in practice, this is an iterative iPhone with one exception, this ridiculous headphone jack, which is a lightning connector. And there's actually no additional headphone jack in the iPhone 7. So you're going to be like, there's everything you have to buy is new. And I made a joke about it and said, look, seriously, you can't charge it while talking on it or listening to music without wireless headsets.
Well, you've got these things.
Yeah, and they're horrible,
yes,
by the way. They don't sound any better, and you can't control your volume without taking your phone out of your pocket. So that's not an advance in technology.
Well, the interesting thing about this is the default is not the music controls, it's the Siri controls. So if you look to the future of the wireless thing, it's not really about listening to music. It's about having a conversation with your phone while your phone is in the pocket.
Right.
As opposed to having a conversation, let's say, with somebody you need to speak to with your phone on your desk.
Yes.
So
that's old school.
John, you got a question here?
Well, I think the question is what happens to Samsung's reputation going forward. At some point, even before the holiday season, does this start to be about the quality of the Note 7 again and not about this recall? I mean, when we look at Dell, when we look at others who have had massive battery-related recalls, it doesn't seem like they took a huge reputation-related hit just as long as they handled it well enough. What do you guys think?
I think that's actually right. Look, the thing that you see online now is people saying Samsung's blow up, and that's just not, that's sensationalist, and they shouldn't be saying that. They had a battery problem, and you're right, the batteries were rushed to market, and some of them were defective, but they found it, and they corrected it. So is it a long-term reputational issue? I hope not.
This was their moment, because this was the time where people were saying that Apple's finally getting beaten on the design front.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely right.
And there's Apple saying, oh, here's our new phone, but design-wise, it's not much different.
Stephen, Shelly, you guys are so good together. Thanks so much. Good to see you both, Stephen Levy and Shelly Palmer.